Crimson Desert, one of the most promising games on the horizon, a game we've had our eyes on for quite some time. It's pushing some very impressive tech. And recently, we had a chance to look at some cool stuff. Specifically, Alex had a chance to look at some cool stuff, and he shared some of it with me here today. And we wanted to do a little preview on this game because, my goodness, this is some beautiful stuff. So, Alex.
Yeah, John, this is a very fantastic looking game here, and I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Looking to get your hands on a free Resident Evil Requiem PC game code? Well, MSI has the promotion for you. Purchase a select MSI gaming monitor or desktop PC, write a review on an eligible retail platform, register your product with MSI, submit your details, and the game code is yours up until the end of March or while stocks last. Check out the video description below for eligible hardware, terms and conditions, and to learn more.
So, first of all, we don't normally do previews in this way, but I think this was a special circumstance, right?
Yeah, basically, I was invited to a preview event to do our own coverage and capture for this game that would have been held in Amsterdam, right about the time we're recording this right now. But as I talked about in DF Direct most recently, I do have a health issue with my back, so I'm trying not to move and do arduous adventures like that at the moment. And the Pearl Abyss, the publisher and developer of this game, were kind enough to provide us with footage that we could have made at that preview event. And they did it in a very special way. I basically asked them, hey, when we go to a preview event, we don't just randomly do gameplay of games. We're big nerds, and we like to do slow moving camera shots with the controller, perfectly locked 60 FPS. Basically looking at all the gameplay, not really, but more so the graphical techniques. And they answered the call, and they did a lot of really amazing footage for us to make this preview video in a style that DF would do. So thank you to the game. And they did it in a cool way where they gave us the exact specs and the system settings that the game is running at. The game was running at, for this preview video footage you're seeing on screen right now, it was running on a AMD Ryzen 9 7900X 3D 12-core processor, a Radeon RX 7900 XTX, so the last gen top-end GPU from AMD, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and we did it with VSync on and FSR native. So this is 4K footage running at native 4K, and the game has presets going from minimum all the way up to cinematic with low, medium, high, ultra in between them. And this was running on ultra. And so it's not the highest settings you can run at, but it's still, 4K native on technically what is a last gen GPU. And it looks like this, and it runs like this, mainly at 60. Some scenes are a little bit lower, but this is obviously work in progress build at ultra high settings at native 4K, but it's running pretty darn well. Definitely running quite differently than a lot of Unreal Engine games would run at native 4K, I'd say.
For sure. And man, while you're laying this out, I'm just looking at the footage here and just the visual quality, man. Sometimes when you see just the right visuals, you almost get a similar feeling to exploring a place in real life.
Yes.
You feel an emotion just seeing the scenery. And there's something about the color use and the way everything moves and just behaves that makes this feel just sublime. And I'm super interested to check it out because this is actually a very big single player open world game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of an RPG, open world, systemic design, I would say, based upon everything I've seen so far and what I played a little bit at the Consumer Electronics Show. Time of day, all the time, sun going up and down, varying cloud weather and varying locations and biome types, a lot of outdoor locations too, because it's kind of got this medieval magic aesthetic, but also there's cities and towns with a lot of indoor areas. It does remind me a bit of Dragon's Dogma 2 in terms of just the world design, but I think this is maybe even a little bit larger in scope. And like I said, the game does focus a lot on systemic aspects, which does give me Breath of the Wild feels, and is powered by an engine that is unique to Pearl Abyss, called the BlackSpace Engine, which is a pretty brutal name.
I love that name, actually, and I love, of course, seeing an in-house engine like this. Honestly, looking at this footage and thinking about how things usually go for us, I would not be surprised to see our Game of the Year thing come out to Crimson Desert versus Resident Evil Requiem. And then you end up arguing that this should win. And
because
then
I like
wins.
Systemic design.
Like, let's find out. Like, maybe that won't happen, but I feel like based on our previous histories, like, there's a good chance that something like that might happen.
Yeah, this is kind of a game that's right up DF's alley because it does a lot of special stuff. And I do think the developers, this game will be releasing simultaneously on console, and we'll be having coverage of a PC review. We're going to have an interview with the tech developers behind the game that will go up on the website, hopefully by the PC review date. And, we're going to be covering this game because it is probably one of the biggest PC releases this year that, at least the ones that have, firm release dates at the moment. Obviously, these things can change. Who knows what this industry does? But like I said, it's a very PC-like game due to that kind of structure as well as the technological design behind the game. And there's a lot of really cool things that it's doing. So as I mentioned earlier, open world systemic. And a big part of that is the changing time of day. And we have confirmation from Prolibis here, actually, that the game does use ray-traced diffuse GI. And you can see that pretty much in every single scene in the game, whether that be outdoor or indoors. And it does appear to be a per pixel effect. So it doesn't seem to be based upon like only probes like we've seen in other games, which is a way to, save on performance. This game does target per pixel. Although I would say for this footage, since it isn't the ultimate high settings of the game as, perhaps it can be even higher quality than we're seeing here. But one thing you'll notice is that like if you're in an indoor area, like this almost church looking area, when the sunlight streams into there or even just the sky lighting, it bounces around the room, giving nooks and crannies a darkness to them. And any of the areas where the sunlight is adjacent to them, it's all brightened up. And they provided some very cool time of day lapse footage here.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Yeah. Of these indoor areas where you can see basically how dramatic the outside weather conditions affect the lighting of an indoor area, which makes sense for like these medieval structures. And then as nighttime rolls around, you can see that GI contribution, that diffuse contribution also applies to local things like torches, sconces and whatnot, which isn't a given because some games have only had like GI, coming from the sun or the moon, but here it does apply apparently to all lights, and it's pretty great looking. It reminds me a lot visually of the stuff that we saw in the massive Snowdrop Engine games, the most recent ones like Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, and Star Wars Outlaws. It really does give me that look.
Yeah.
It looks really great. And one of my favorite parts of it, though, is that, and now this is also an artistic thing as well as a tech thing, but when you get to nighttime, the game actually is super dark.
It's dark.
It's a pet peeve of mine in games.
That makes sense with the Dragon's Dogma reference earlier then, right?
Yeah.
That was one thing that always did well. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, so we have ray traced diffuse GI. What other ray tracing do we have?
Well, it appears the game does use ray traced reflections. I saw that at the CES preview that I had there at the AMD booth, as well as here in the footage that they've kindly provided. They have a number of shots. One, any of the water you see in the game, the standing water, pretty obvious RT reflection contribution there. It seems to be a mix of screen space, depending upon the element on screen, and the distance with an RT reflection pass. And then there's an indoor shot here of like all these people crowded around what looks like tables eating. And there, the time of day is changing. But if you look at the ground, there's some like polished marble, it appears to be. And you can get a really good sense, both of the RTGI diffuse contribution to the scene, as well as the really nice looking RT reflections here. So it's not very typical to have games that have like medieval aesthetics to have RT reflections, like Dragon's Dogma 2 didn't include them. But here, there's enough shiny stuff lying around that they thought it was a good enough thing to add in. And that does kind of actually rival stuff like you see with Lumen, where Lumen does both diffuse lighting and reflections, and their system does the same thing here too. But obviously, we're seeing the game run at native 4K on an RX 7900 XTX last gen AMD GPU, targeting 60 FPS, and that's something that you really wouldn't get out of a UE5 title. So I'm impressed at the fact that ray tracing is running this well on an older AMD GPU.
That's awesome. What else is awesome, though, going through your footage before, I think the thing that really stood out to me the most, actually, is the way they handle water. Because usually when you have, like, streams of water, you know, water lapping up on shore, it was just a lot of, like, 2D effects, texture effects, particles, things like that to give you the impression of water, like, moving and, like, changing across the shore. But here, they seem to have come up with some sort of, like, 3D displacement system for the waves, where like it's like a physical body that washes up and recedes on shore, right?
Yeah, it appears to. One thing, a lot of games, they do have like a 3D deformation in some other games, but it's based upon just height only, right?
Right.
And here it appears that the water also has a, like, at least the concept of it in what it's calculating also has a sense that it needs to fill space. So that means the down and below and back and behind it. So it's not just an up-down motion, but it can go backwards upon itself, which is a pretty rare thing. That's usually been faked in games with just like, you know, some sort of baked effect or some baked geometry that appears when something gets to the shore. And here you can actually see it on, there's a number of shots here of the shore, but you can see it just like hitting against rocks and receding back down on itself, which is really awesome looking. And they use it for multiple, not just like the ocean style water or the seas in the game, but also it appears to be covering streams and rivers. And there it allows for pretty natural looking falling water, which once again, usually for most games, that would be something you'd have to like, I wouldn't say fake it, but it would be more like an artist driven thing instead of just systemically being as a part of how the water functions without much interaction. That interaction also includes stuff from like your character or physicalized objects. And that's another thing that I kind of liked about this game. It's not fully present in the footage I've been provided here, but I saw it at the CES event, is that there's a lot of destruction in the game, and you'll see the character here going into the water and smashing like, what do you call them? Tree stumps.
Exactly.
And the game's trees and vegetation is very destructible, which is pretty cool. And there's probably more destructible stuff that I haven't even seen yet. But when I play this game and this like PC ethos that it kind of exudes to me, is I always go back to the middle 2000s. And when I see games actually focusing on destruction again, instead of like, how good does the cinematic look, I get super excited, because that's like the stuff that got me into gaming technology, like the interactivity of worlds. So this game seems to have it in spades, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, I also like to pick up giant tree trunks and smash them into the water into pieces. And now we can do it in game. It's great. So, another thing, though, in this footage is that there's a lot of long-range shots I noticed. And I'm curious, did you get any information about the way they're handling, like, distant LODs and such? Because it's something that varies a lot per game, and it's difficult to do right. Obviously, that was a big focus of Nanite from Epic, but what about this one? What are they doing here?
Well, I remember there were at CES, they specifically told us I believe they were using Speed Tree. Here it looks like they are really focusing on the fact that when there are trees in the mid to short distance, that they don't disappear at a distance or turn into some imposter, which looks very different in terms of how it is shaded or how it is lit and shadowed. So one thing you'll see is that at a distance, trees still look 3D and still appear. And the grass that is kind of going along the rolling countryside also still seems to appear really far in the distance. Yes, this is ultra settings, but still not a typical thing to see in games, especially with the lighting and shadowing working well with it. I'm talking about you, Halo Infinite. You know, like it does really...
Halo Infinite didn't like that.
No, Halo Infinite didn't like that. It does a really good long-range LOD here. And the one thing that I've recently that I picked up here is also the trees and grass animate pretty far into the distance. And recently in UE5 titles, we've seen as a kind of optimization, perhaps for virtual shadow maps reasons, that a lot of UE5 games have been like culling the animation for vegetation pretty close to the screen. We saw that in Borderlands as well as Silent Hill F. with one of the settings the game has when you go to performance mode. And so seeing a game that still has a lot of these interactions with the vegetation going far into the distance is impressive. And that includes, other stuff that goes without saying. This footage is just shown all over the place, like the skies, the volumetric clouds, the volumetric lighting, the fact that particles are lit and shaded based upon local, GI and lighting conditions. Like I really like
that's the best thing, right?
Yeah, the rain particles at night.
Yes,
very cool. So all great looking stuff here.
Yeah, the rain particles in particular is one of the most stunning things for me. Like doing rain already is something that a lot of games still don't get right. Only the rare ones that do. But doing rain at night like this, I can't think of many examples where, I mean, I guess the closest thing it reminds me of actually is like The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah, that's a good example.
That's a smaller scale game and very, very cinematic. So doing that possibly even better in such a large scale game like this, that's pretty insane.
Yeah, it's going to be spectacular when it comes out. And that's, this is just a preview video. I'm going to try and do like a tech blowout review for this game when it comes out. We do have some information before release. AMD has already put out a statement saying that this game's going to support a number of the FSR Redstone features, including ray regeneration, machine learning, FG, frame generation, and FSR4 or FSR AI as they call it these days. And then I can only imagine that they're going to cover all the other, vendor technologies, but we'll have to see until those things are announced. I think NVIDIA may post something about it if they already haven't posted something about it on their blog like they usually do regarding driver coverage. Intel, who knows? So there's a lot of great tech going in here. We're going to also try and get a PS5 review out there in time for release. This is releasing at the same time as Death Stranding 2, but we're going to definitely have all our eyes on this title.
Boom. Heck yeah. Man, this is good looking stuff. I had been looking at this over the years and sort of keeping an eye on it, but like now that it's almost here, like I'm like, okay, I'm actually really interested in checking this out, especially because it's coming from a different place than usual, a studio I wasn't really familiar with, and like doing something ambitious like this, there's always a chance that they come up with something just like shocking and new and really special. And everything here looks amazing, so I'm really, really excited to give it a shot. So here's hoping for the best. But anyway, thanks for sharing all the deets, Alex.
Anytime, John.
And thank you for watching Digital Foundry. And we'll see you next time. And Alex, take us out.
Auf Wiedersehen.